Hey everyone, it's been a while. At least on YouTube, that is. I've been on TikTok here and there, but there's really no overlap between those two audiences. And TikTok only lets me do 3-minute videos. And when you watch a movie or a show and you just kind of have to vent about every single thought that has popped up in your brain about that, you got to do it. And that's currently how I feel with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's kind of ironic because this channel was so comic book movie reliant when I was a teenager because that was the videos that got views. It was theorizing about the cinematic universe. And that's how I watched every single superhero movie then. And it was really unhealthy. It really was because as I've grown up, I've learned that maturing is realizing you should watch these as movies and not as events. And that's kind of how I've operated the past few years, and it's been way better for me. And I recommend you do the same. But uh, this video is just kind of going to be me talking about Across the Spider Verse because I have a lot of thoughts, and it's one of those movies that is so fresh and unique that you kind of just have so many different things that pop up in your brain that you just kind of need to express. And that's kind of how I felt about Into the Spider Verse when it first released, because Into the Spider Verse released after I stopped uploading on this channel. And I remember seeing it and going, wow, I did not expect to love that as much as I did. But I still wasn't like, I like that more than Spider Man 2. Spider Man 2 is like one of my favorite movies ever. When I was growing up, I watched that. Toy Story and Revenge of the Sith literally on a daily repeat when I was a kid. So if you had told me that I would have a superhero movie beat out Spider-Man 2, I would have called you crazy. But as I've gotten older, I've appreciated Into the Spider-Verse more, and that has now taken the stamp of my favorite comic book movie, Spider-Man movie, and one of my favorite movies ever made. So, of course, I'm excited for Across the Spider Verse. There's a new directing trio that I haven't really seen any work that they had done prior. Um, and, I was excited, but I thought, hey, they're probably going to play it a little bit safe. And, that's fine, And then they announced that it's a two-parter. I'm like, okay, interesting. Thank God they changed the name, by the way, from Across the Spider Verse Part 1 and Part 2 to Across and Beyond the Spider Verse. That would have been a terrible decision to have a part 1 and 2, taking up 2 movies in a trilogy, as titles. And it's out now, and I have a lot of thoughts, and I know a lot of people do as well, and just outright, I have to say I absolutely adore this movie, and I think it is a revolution for what animation is going to be. I mean, just like how Into the Spider Verse was in 2018, we did not expect how influential that film was going to be before it released. And it has completely redefined a lot of movies that have come out in recent years. And I mean, you saw Mitchell versus the Machines kind of looked a little bit like it and took inspiration from that. You got the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that is heavily taking inspiration from it. And there's probably a lot more examples that I can't think of right now. Uh, but the style of that first film is being replicated a lot. And we need to see more of how they would take the next steps from the creative minds that brought us that original Into the Spider Verse. And I just gotta say, Across the Spider Verse is a massive step up in terms of animation and in terms of the fluidity of everything. And it's just incredible the artistry on display here. I think they said there's over 1,000 animators that worked on this, and you can just tell that they put their heart and souls into every single frame that is in this film. And I mean, this stuff is so beautiful. Like you could frame every single image that is put up on the screen. You could put each one as your wallpaper on your desktop. I'm not even kidding. That's how good this movie looks. and it moves so fluidly. It's so specific with how it animates each character and how unique each one operates. I mean, Spider-Punk is animated with this like clip art kind of style. Miles is a little bit more 3D animated, but he's still got that comic book look to him. Spider-Man 2099 has a more futuristic look to him, and that's not even bringing up all the other Spider-Men in this film and Spider-Women, and it's just kinda like, wow, they really went all out, and that's not just to say they went all out with the animation because that's what we all could have expected. They went all out with this story, and this story is truly remarkable. And I didn't know what to expect because all the stuff they had revealed leading up to the movie with the Spot and 2099 and all the other spider people chasing down Miles, I was kind of just expecting the Spot to be a villain that kind of just sets up Miles's character in like a one-off scene. Um, but they completely got me, and that was the whole point of that guy's character was you view him as a villain of the week that takes it to the next step, and he ultimately becomes the overarching threat to the entire multiverse. And that was fun. I love that he was the dude that got the bagel thrown on him in Into the Spider-Verse. I think that's hilarious. And Jason Schwartzman, I think, played him. He was great in the role. All the voice acting was just pitch perfect and spot on and great. But then you have the family dynamics of both Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy. And both of them have their own things going on with their parents that are really touching and hard to get by. I mean, you've got the um, contrast where Gwen is already disassociated from her father, and Miles is kind of disassociating from his parents, but he's not doing it um, for his selfishness. He's doing it for their protection and their safety, but he's not really putting in an effort to explain why. And it's kind of holding down the family, and they're blaming him for things, and he's kind of blaming them also for not really trusting him, but they don't really know what to trust. And it makes a really nice situation between the two characters when Gwen ultimately shows up into the story with Miles. And I love Miles's bounce back with his parents. I think that stuff is really cute and touching and adorable. And I've seen a lot of people complain about the first act being very long. And I do agree with that. But I think if you view this movie through the lens of it and Beyond the Spider Verse being one big 4 hour long movie, this having like an hour long first act, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense because the ending of this movie, if you go into it knowing that it has a cliffhanger, you need that first hour of build up to really be invested in that cliffhanger, like as much as you are. And I ultimately forgive it for taking its time. There's some stuff at the beginning where they recap the first movie like 3 times in a span of 30 minutes. And I was like, okay, we don't really need that. But the recaps were still fun. Um, so they could have trimmed other stuff out, but how they show that other stuff, it's still so fun and engaging that you kind of can't get mad at the movie for spending its time there because it's so infectiously charming, you know? And that's kind of the whole theme of this movie is how lovable it is. You know, you have Miles as the protagonist, and he's ultimately controlling this entire story, and the fate of the multiverse rests on him deciding whether or not he wants to fall in line like all these other Spider-Men and women, or he takes it by the balls and actually goes to create his own story. And I love that story beat with him being revealed to being the true anomaly of this entire thing. And that obviously sets up the big third act twist, with him being in the alternate dimension. And I love all that stuff. And I think them writing in a reason for Miles kind of being so important in this entire narrative, I think it's great. And I think it makes sense for his character and the situation that his parents are about to face in the third movie. And, we haven't seen his full story come to fruition. We thought we were going to see it, but obviously he was in the alternate dimension. But we've seen Gwen Stacy's story get fulfilled. And that was a really satisfying conclusion because in that first 10 to 15 minutes, I mean, you're starting the movie off with Gwen Stacy. And I like that decision because it set up literally your expectations for the whole movie perfectly in that quarter of an hour. I mean, the animation from start to finish, the action in that set piece, along with how the Vulture was portrayed and Spider-Man 2099 was portrayed, and Gwen Stacy's personal family struggle she had with her father during that sequence, it basically set up what you were to expect from the entire 2.5 hours you were about to see unfold. And it was freaking perfect. Like, honestly, it was. And it did a fantastic job. And then they dropped the title card after that sequence. You're like, okay, no way we're getting this for the full movie. And we did. And it was incredible every frame of the way. Completely unrelated, the using the term canon for how the multiverse is intact, I think it's funny. It's a little on the nose, but it works and it's clever. But, I guess I'll get into the cameos and all that kinda stuff. I'm not really someone who's, big on cameos and forcing those into your movies. It feels really cheap to get bonus points from an audience. I mean, that was what the Super Mario Brothers movie was earlier this year. It was just cameo and reference one after the other just to try and get, uh, extra credit from your viewers because, "Hey, I know that thing." It didn't feel earned in that movie, but here it feels so earned and it doesn't harp on any of them too much. It's either just a quick joke that goes by in a flash and you laugh and you move on, or you just don't really mind it at all because they also kind of serve a purpose in the story because they actually take part in the story. Um, and also, the story itself is so damn good that you don't really care that you're taking a little bit of a detour. You because you still have that investment and you're not just kind of like, oh, why are we getting away from this? And all of them they're cute. Some of them were a little really niche, like the Donald Glover one was just out of left field. I did not expect that to happen. It was a little odd as well. But if you view this movie in the lens that it's basically the first half of a movie like Dune was in 2021, then if the third movie comes out and it's great, it's only going to elevate this one because this is so dependent on how they close it out. Because I thought they were going to end this movie at like four separate occasions with Miles escaping New Haven, York. I thought that would be the stop part they'd ended at. Gwen reconciling with her father and going after Miles. I was like, okay, that's where they're going to end it. Then they reveal Miles is in an alternate dimension. And I was like, okay, that makes sense to end it right there. Then they do the reveal that Miles' alternate version is the Prowler. I'm like, okay, that's where they end it. And that's ultimately where they did. And they set up just enough stuff for you to be excited for a whole new adventure that is still part of this one, but also wrapped up enough threads for you to feel satisfied with the entire movie itself. Because in my theater, when the to be continued popped up, everyone went, oh, what? And when that happens, you hooked your audience. You just know. And that is what this film successfully did. It had true characters that you could latch onto, that had personal drama that we all could relate to and also be invested in. Miles' story did not feel out of reach. It felt natural, but also Miguel O'Hara's situation still felt real and understandable as to why you would want to keep this all intact. They used the canon event with Spider Man India and how Miles broke that. I think that worked. And it kind of gives you an idea of how this whole universe is in structure. So, like I said, I think that if Beyond the Spider Verse screws the pooch, which I doubt it will, I mean, it's the exact same creative team, um, then this movie will go down because you're just kind of like, okay, it's not as great because the tail end of it isn't as because you know what happens with their setups and you're kind of gonna get disappointed. Um, but if it absolutely kills it, this is only going to get viewed in a more positive light than it already is. And this movie is getting overwhelmingly positive feedback. And I'm in agreement. I think this film is utterly fantastic. The action sequences are so fluid. There's a chase scene with Miles running away from all the Spider-Men and women, and I was utterly ascending during that entire sequence. It was so fantastic. And all the other scenes, I mean, the opening scene with the blob or the spot, sorry, not the blob. That's a that's an 80s movie. Um it, I mean, the editing back and forth with the parents in the principal's office and Miles in the action sequence, it flowed so well and was so digestible and so well orchestrated that you can just tell that they had every single beat of this movie planned out to a T. And they really took their time on this, and it paid off in dividends. It was fantastic. I loved every second of it. If you haven't seen it yet, I mean, I just kind of spoiled the whole thing, but please do yourself a favor and go watch it. I don't really go see movies more than once in the theater, but uh, this one I might have to make an exception for because it was that good. And like I brought it up at the beginning, but if you had told me that Spider-Man 2 would not be my favorite superhero movie when I was 15, I would have called you crazy. Now it's number 3 because this was just that good. And I cannot wait to see where Miles and Gwen's stories go next. And yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I just kind of had to talk about this movie. I just kind of felt an obligation to just speak my mind about it. This is raw, uncut. I'm not going to cut this up or anything. This has just been my thoughts spilled out onto the scene. I'm not really going to edit this. It's just going to be kind of like a podcast. So if you enjoy this kind of content, let me know. This could be my only upload for the rest of this channel's life. I just like talking about movies and want a little bit of a safe space. So thank you all for listening to my thoughts on Across the Spider Verse. And yeah, have a good day.